Good evening. Thank you to all the candidates for joining us for this forum hosted by the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley and AARP of North Dakota. My name is Amy Phillips, and I will be your moderator for this forum. We are joined this evening by our District 46 candidates, and they are Jess Arneson, Desiree Morton, Todd Reisenauer, Will Thompson, Michelle Powers, and Jim Casper. The forum is being streamed live and will be recorded for playback on the City of Fargo's government PEG TV channel, TV Fargo 56. This recording will be posted to our website and Facebook page. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. If you would like to learn about us, please visit our website or Facebook page. Thank you to the City of Fargo for providing the space and technical assistance for this evening's event, and to all our volunteers greeting, collecting questions, and timekeeping. We're so grateful for all your help. I'll take a moment to highlight the League of Women Voters 2024 online voter guide, which is at vote411.org. At this website, you can find your polling location and get personalized ballot information to compare the candidates who are seeking your vote. Before we begin, I'd like to review the rules and procedures. Questions have been submitted in advance by the public, online, and in person here tonight. Questions may be screened for clarity or combined with other similar questions. All candidates will be given an opportunity to address each question. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Each will then be allowed 1 minute to respond to each question. At the conclusion of the question and answer period, candidates will be given another 1 minute for their closing remarks. A timer, which is on the wall over here, will indicate how much time is remaining and will indicate when your time is done. When you hear the beep or beeps, that means your time has expired. Please complete your sentence or thought so that we may move on to the next candidate or question. And we would appreciate the audience's consideration in maintaining a quiet room so that all candidates have the opportunity to answer their questions fully and in a timely manner. We will now begin opening statements with Jess and proceed down the line. We will then rotate the first speaker for each new question. Jess Arneson, you may give your opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you for having us all here tonight and for hearing us. My name is Jess Arneson. I am originally from Mayville, though my husband Jared and I have lived in Fargo for the last 11 years. Prior to that, we bought our first home in Castleton. And when we came back to Fargo, we started a coffee shop in South Fargo called Red River Coffee that we had for 8 years before selling it last summer. Before that, my career life was in macro level social work as a community builder for local nonprofits and as a community volunteer.
Thank you. Desiree Morton.
Hi, my name is Desiree Morton. I was born and raised here in Fargo. I graduated from Fargo South High, and then I went on to get a degree in education from NDSU. I married my high school sweetheart, and he was in the military, 82nd Airborne, so we went down to North Carolina and lived there for a year while he finished out his term. We came back up to Fargo. I did some substitute teaching and a little bit of coaching. And then we decided to have a family, and we have 5 beautiful children. We homeschooled each one of them all the way through high school. They all survived their mother and are doing fairly well. So that was a blessing for me to be able to do that. I came from a very conservative family, and I remain conservative to this day.
Thank you. Todd Reisenauer.
Well, thank you, everyone, for attending and everybody who's taking the time to view this out on the interwebs. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Todd Reisenauer. I'm running for the District 46 House of Representatives. And a little bit about myself. I grew up on a farm. So I'm a farm kid, Western North Dakota, speak. And then when I turned 18, graduated from Dickinson High School. I came to school here at NDSU, graduated there, met my wife, Amy. We got married in 2003, so we've been married for 21 years now. Same time, I started in the software industry. And I'm going to do a little bit of a switcheroo because I heard a word in the previous debate, and it was the word vision. And so when I think about my career and some things that I want to tell you, it's guided me to the place I am today. It's really about, I feel I'm an individual that is always seeking for vision, understanding, and listening to people. So you'll hear that kind of refrain from me over and over again tonight because it's ingrained in me. It's a part of who I am. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Will Thompson.
Hello, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and thank you to the people for taking time out of your busy lives to engage civically in our community. My name is Will Thompson. I grew up in South Fargo. I graduated from Davies High School in 2016, and this last spring I graduated from North Dakota State University with a master's degree in communication. I work 2 jobs currently. I'm a radio producer at KFGO, and I teach improv at North High School. I am running because I'm sick and tired of seeing people, especially young people, that are fleeing this state because of the culture wars that are being fought out in Bismarck. They don't feel comfortable or safe to build families in this community. And I think that we need to stop prioritizing these cultural issues over the increasing of standard of living for North Dakotans. I think it's time for a new generation of leadership with new perspective and new ideas, and that's what I'm running to represent.
Thank you. Michelle Powers.
Hi, I'm Michelle Powers, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this forum for us. I appreciate that. I was born and raised in Fargo, graduated from Shanley High School, went on to UND, graduated from UND, and raised my family, my 4 sons, up in Grand Forks. Moved back down to Fargo about over 20 years ago, because my folks were getting older and knew they needed care. And I'm glad I did that. My boys weren't so happy, but I am glad I did. And I am running for District 46 to serve the people of District 46. They need to have a voice in Bismarck. I'm not going to Bismarck to serve Bismarck government. I'm here going there to serve the folks.
Thank you. Jim Casper.
Well, thank you to the League for hosting us this evening. My name is Jim Casper. I've been a member of the North Dakota House of Representatives since 2000. The people of District 46 blessed me to elect me then and have reelected me every time since, and I'm hopeful that it'll be another time. I'm originally from Beulah. Played basketball in high school, football in high school. I actually played college basketball at Bismarck Junior College for 2 years. Graduate of NDSU. My wife and I have been in Fargo for over 40 years, raised our kids here. I'm a graduate of NDSU. As I think I said, I own an employee benefits company called Asset Management Group. We do employee benefits for group insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, and so on. I have chaired the Government and Veterans Affairs Committee in the legislature for 5 legislative sessions, and also was appointed by leadership to chair the Ethics Commission to implement the Ethics Commission that was passed by the people of North Dakota in 2018. Looking forward to the debate tonight.
Thank you. We will now move on to the question and answer portion of the forum. And Desiree, you will answer first. And the first question is, what are your top 3 legislative priorities if elected to represent District 46?
Wow, top 3. I guess my top priority at this point would be education. I am a former educator. I am very passionate about having school choice for parents to make that decision and how they would choose to educate their children. And we homeschooled our 5, and that's not for everyone. Some people will love to use the public school system, and some people would love to educate their children in a parochial school or a private school. place. And so I think it's something that we need to address as a legislature to provide help for these families that are choosing to educate their children in an alternative way. And that is one of my highest priorities.
Thank you. Todd, your top 3 priorities.
So to do 3, really I'd start with increasing access to quality and affordable childcare, because that's going to solve another one of my priorities, which is our workforce challenge that we have in the state. So you're really solving 2 issues with, not solving, but you're addressing 2 issues with one piece of legislation, and that is access to quality and affordable childcare. Second is it's just general healthcare, in 2 specific areas that I'd look to is our mental health crisis. We've got every story, every tragedy that happens, it seems like it begins with somebody that just didn't have access to quality and timely mental health care. And then also what's going on with women's health. I do look at this as an infringement, very dangerous area we're at with women not being able to control their bodies. So that would be part of the healthcare. And then third, supporting public education. I look at...
Thank you. Will, your top 3 priorities.
Well, my first priority would be mental health care. I made the decision in high school to be open and honest about my own personal struggles with mental health care, and that helped other people that were struggling. We know how to help people that struggle with mental health issues, with addiction issues. We just need to get the resources into the right hands so that care can be given to people. My second top priority would be helping young families. And there's a myriad of policies that would go to helping that. We need to help young families get into homes. We need to help with childcare and paid parental leave. All of these things, they say it takes a village to raise a child, and that's never been more true than in our modern time. And then my third priority would be a focus on a renewable energy system. I have a dream that as North Dakota will continue to be an energy leader in the country going into the future. And that requires us to take the profits from our natural resources and invest them in a diversified, sustainable energy grid.
Thank you. Michelle, your 3 priorities.
Priority is, one is community safety. With the fentanyl crisis, the drug addicts, the homelessness, it addresses the mental health crisis on the streets. It's the safety in our community, and then also endangering our first responders. They need to have all the resources, everything that they need to address and to remain safe themselves. The other thing it would be taxes. The people that I have spoken to, as I've door knocked, have wanted this addressed for over 15 years. They would like to, for the folks in Bismarck, the legislatures, to finally get something done on that issue. And the other one is having parents remain the sole responsibility of their children.
Thank you. Jim, your top 3 priorities.
I think the first thing that's on the people's minds has been on my mind since I've been in the legislature is to reform property tax. We have that measure on the ballot. I don't know if it's going to pass or not. Whether it passes or it doesn't, we're going to implement something in the next legislative session. Over the time I've been in Bismarck, I've actually introduced 27 bills to deal with property tax relief and property tax reform. Most of the time I was able to pass them in the House, but the Senate killed them, and that our Republican colleagues were the people who controlled the Senate. So there's both sides of the aisle that have issues there. I'm also concerned about strengthening our schools for our kids and our parents. I believe right now they're failing our kids and our parents based upon the results that our kids are achieving. We've got to do better, and I hope that we will do something there. And the other thing is I want to focus in the next legislative session on reducing foolish state government spending. We as Republicans have gotten into a habit of spending money foolishly. Conservatives like myself want to change it.
Thank you. And Jess, your top priorities.
My top priority is to bring the voice to Bismarck of everybody who keeps our communities safe, healthy, and stable. I live in North Dakota and love North Dakota because I feel safe, healthy, and stable. And I feel like that is all at risk. Our police and our paramedics and our fire, they're all underfunded. Every nurse and teacher I know is overstretched and burnt out and short-staffed. We need to start funding our priorities. The state needs to start sending money back to our communities to help keep them safe, healthy, and stable.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we'll start with Todd. And the question is, how do you plan to address the current challenges in education, such as funding for public schools, teacher shortages, and funding for higher education?
So I think it's really a layered issue. Starting, I'll take teachers. As Jess just alluded to, there's many reasons why teachers are getting burned out, but we're seeing them leave the profession in droves. I think part of that is changing the narrative of where we're not attacking teachers, we're not questioning their curriculum, we're not micromanaging them, we're letting them teach. That's what they went to college for. So I think we can retain teachers by doing that, but also it's a question of what kind of communities, what is their values to attract and bring in new teachers. So that's something that we have to address, and that ties into a whole myriad of issues around quality of life. I believe public education is the foundation of our country, gives people opportunities at the outset. Whether or not they take them and take advantage is up to the individual. However, we need to fund fully our public educational system in this state. And, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Will, your response.
Well, to build on what my colleague Todd was saying, the funding needs to be there. Resources need to be there so the teachers can focus on teaching. I'm, for the first time in my life, on the education side in North High School. I went through the public school system as a student, and now I'm a coach, I suppose you could call it, in improv. And I've already seen how a lot of the discussion revolves around what's possible based on what they have the funding and budget for. And instead, it should be focused on what's best for the students. When it comes to retaining teachers and not burning them out, I think this goes back to what I said in my opening statement about how the focus on culture war issues in Bismarck is pushing people out of the state. I know one family where both the husband and wife are teachers. They left this state this last cycle, school year, I suppose you call it. They left this state for Minnesota because they felt safer and more comfortable teaching in that state.
Thank you. Michelle.
Education in the secondary and elementary, the teachers need to get paid more. It always is an attractive, we can get outsiders. Our administration needs to be addressed. That is skyrocketing. So if we can entice teachers to stay in the state, it always comes down to dollars. The higher education, I'm only familiar with UND, and it is a strong university, just like NDSU. Why we have 11 higher education universities, I would have to investigate that.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
I think one of the things that we as a city and as a state need to do is focus giving our teachers in our school systems back the power and the authority that too many of them have lost to the administration. Our teachers are great teachers. They want to teach our kids. There's disruption in the classrooms. I have friends who work in the school systems here in Fargo who tell me the classrooms and the areas in the schools are out of control in many cases. Our administration is not supporting our schools in Fargo. We need to empower our schools. We need to get the administration to focus on giving power back to the teachers and let the teachers teach so that the results will be what we want for our kids, which is learning the basic curriculum in high school, in grade school, so they can go on to a successful life and a family. Higher ed, there's an idea going around right now by some of my colleagues to focus on 2- and 3-year degrees as opposed to 4-year degrees. Why only 4 years?
Thank you. Jess.
Hi, would you mind repeating the question, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
How do you plan to address the current challenges in education, such as funding for public schools, teacher shortages, and funding for higher education?
As far as funding, Fargo, Bismarck, Grand Forks, and Minot have experienced great stress, which we all know is why our property tax issue is as big as it is, as long as it's been. Our funding for our infrastructure has not kept up with the growth that these cities have had. I believe that the state needs to be doing more to help fund basic infrastructure, social infrastructure such as education. As far as our teachers in schools, I think that we have a lot of kids coming to school not ready for school, and we need to be helping families, and we need to be having more social workers and counselors available to schools so that teachers can teach and not be taking on those roles themselves. And I think that we should be doing more to invest in apprenticeship programs and skills and tech, as well as four-year colleges, not either or.
Thank you. Desiree.
Yeah, I've actually done a little bit of research on the funding that the public schools receive from the state is 80% for education. So 80% of their education already is funded by the state of North Dakota. In Fargo, our property tax, 50% of that is for school taxes. In North Dakota, it is costing $14,000 for 1 year to educate one student. They can do it in Utah for $7,500. My question would be, is where's the money going? And I don't think it's a shortage of funding. I think administration is not paying the teachers what they're worth. I think there's too much at the top. There's too many things that are being taught that are not necessary. Whatever happened to reading, writing, arithmetic, science, and math? I said that.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we'll start with Will to answer. And that question is, do you believe that tax dollars should only support public, not private schools?
I do. I think that tax dollars should go to support our public schools. I think if you would like to have your child attend a private school, a religious school, or a non-religious school, that's perfectly fine, and you should be allowed to do that. But that's a decision that you're making, and then you should have to cover the expenses of it. The reason that we have public schools is that it's an economy of scale. We have a large system which allows us to theoretically educate people for a better cost per student than if we're going to segment and privatize into smaller single schools, so to speak. So yes, I do not support taking people's public tax money and using it for private schools. Public money should stay in the public domain, in my opinion.
Thank you. Michelle?
I think the dollars should always follow the child. This is where the parents have the sole responsibility, and I was one of those parents that paid double. I had them in private school, private Catholic school, and then I also paid the public school. At that time, they did switch because it was just an elementary school, and the Grand Forks public schools were wonderful. They were wonderful. The teachers were wonderful. They weren't overburdened with some of the nonsense that's going on now. And my children had a great education. The dollars for a parent wanting to send their child to a private school, even if they want to go to a different area, they should always stay with the child.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Something's got to change because our kids are being failed. Right now, 30 to 40% of the kids in our school system are only achieving the levels of education for reading, writing, and math that they should. So our kids are being failed, so something's wrong. Something has to change. There's no competition in the public school systems except for the private schools, which they're gaining momentum, but they're not growing as fast as they would like to. So I would support a partnership of public and private funds for schools. The last session we passed a bill. $1,500 would follow the student. The rest of the dollars would stay at the school. So the school would lose the student, which means they had less cost to educate, but they'd keep 80 or so % of the dollars. We passed that bill in the House and the Senate, but our governor vetoed it. He vetoed it because he said it wasn't enough money.
Thank you. Jess?
I believe that public dollars should stay with public education. I also, I lost my thought, excuse me. I believe that public dollars should stay with public education.
Good. Thank you. Desiree?
Well, I believe that parents should have a right to educate their children in whichever way they desire to do it, and they shouldn't be penalized for not having their kids in a public school. I went to public school. It was fine, but we chose to go the homeschool route with our children, and we paid our taxes. And we also had to buy curriculum. And I feel that there is enough money in the state, really, that should be given back to the people. It's our money. Let the state use the money to help parents. It doesn't, the public school is going to benefit because they're going to have smaller classes, and I think it's competition. It's going to help the public schools to say, hey, maybe we need to get better. Our kids are failing, like Jim said, they are.
Okay, thank you. Todd?
So this is kind of uncanny. I'll finish my thought where I was cut off on my last question. So and I'm going to parrot Jess. Public money, public tax dollars needs to stay in public education. That's just clear as day in my mind. And this is coming from somebody who is an uncle to 5 nieces and a niece and nephew that went to Dickinson Trinity. So I understand the issue, I understand the hardship, but we've built a system to educate everybody, and that is our public education system.
Okay, thank you. I've been handed a question which I believe is connected to the one that you just answered. So I'm going to put this one out also, and we'll start with Michelle for answering this question. What is the answer to school deserts? Much of the state only has one option for education.
You mean you're talking about the smaller towns?
I think it was somebody in the
desert. Mm-hmm. I would hope that actually living in a smaller town, you probably know everybody in there. You know all the teachers, you know all the students, and that's very much a benefit. So I don't see a problem that, because they don't have a choice to go to a private school, they can still send them to a private school. And you can also homeschool. So I'm not quite sure what the bottom line of the question is.
Okay. Jim, would you like to answer that?
Well, thank you. I'm sort of with Michelle. I mean, when I grew up in Beulah, the population was 1,300. We had one grade school and one high school. I was educated pretty good. Graduated third in my class of 45 or 46. And I think the small towns in North Dakota generally are doing a better job of educating our kids than the bigger schools. As I said earlier, I think we have a real problem in the Fargo school system. I think the other bigger school systems in the state of North Dakota have similar problems. I think they're over-administrated and under-focusing on the teachers and the kids. Let's get back in the school system to focusing on where the focus should be. Teach the kids the basics, give the parents the responsibility to be involved in the school system, and give the teachers the dollars they need to teach and give them the authority they need to run the classroom. We will change our system, but the competition out there would also be good.
Thank you. Jess?
I guess my first thought goes to the challenge of recruiting teachers into very rural areas, and that would be an area that would need attention. I'd need to learn more and do more research on that, but that's where my focus would be. And just really quick, since I have a little bit of time left, I gathered my thought from the last question. I apologize. I'm the daughter of a special ed teacher. I can't believe I let that slide. But my biggest concern with putting public dollars into private schools is because, from my understanding, private schools don't have to serve every child. Public schools do. They don't get to pick and choose the children that they teach and the challenges that those children bring through their door. So if I was going to be a part of any conversation for any bill that was going to look at providing any public dollars to private schools, that's a non-stop issue for me.
Thank you. Desiree, your answer to the question of school deserts?
I'm not exactly sure what a school desert is, I guess. I'm going to have to look that up on Google. But if it's like others were talking about, if it's like there's only one school available in a rural community, if that's what they mean by that, I think that in many ways that's a benefit because you have a smaller class size. You can focus more on the children. I think the teachers probably have better control in their classrooms. I would think it would be a really good problem to have.
Okay, thank you. Todd?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's a school on an island, remote, without access to maybe tools, resources that Fargo may have. If that's the premise, technology can bridge a lot of gaps. And I'm not talking pandemic kind of virtual school. I'm talking classes that are provided in classrooms, but maybe the teacher's remote. Maybe the curriculum is delivered by somebody that's not actually in that community. So that would just be a top of mind solution for that, if that's how I understand deserts.
Thank you. Will?
Well, I was born in the Minnewacan area of North Dakota, a rural area, and I think the crux of this question isn't that their only option is the one public school in the small area. I think it's that there are no public schools anymore. In Minnewacan, they've combined with Fort Totten, the reservation, and so they get federal money, and they've been able to keep a school open because of that. But because of the lack of resources in these rural areas, you have Minnewacan, Four Winds, Leeds, a bunch of different smaller schools pooling their resources so they can do extracurricular activities. I think it's a symptom of a larger problem, which is our rural parts of the state and the country at large are being starved of resources. They're dying. You can't survive without people. And I think the biggest harbinger of what might be coming for a small town is when the public school closes, and we can't allow that to happen.
Thank you. Moving on to another question, and Jim, you will answer this one first. What are your thoughts on affordable housing in District 46? What policies will you advocate for to address housing shortages?
Well, there's a couple of things that we could do. We need to reform property tax. I've got a bill that I'm working on for the next legislative session. I frankly don't think that the Measure 4 is going to pass, but I have a bill in the next legislative session that will have the state buy down the property tax for residential people. So, if you're a resident, you're a homestead. So we'll focus on single-family homes or duplexes or what have you. That would give the average person anywhere from $200 to $400 per month to be able to buy a home if they did not have to pay that property tax on their primary residence. I've had bills over the years that we would eliminate property tax or freeze property tax for our seniors so our seniors can stay in their homes. We also have the Bank of North Dakota, and I think we should be utilizing the Bank of North Dakota more for buy downs on interest rates for first-time home buyers and programs like that. I know that they have the capability of doing it. We should be doing that.
Thank you. Jess?
I've spent a good portion of my life working with seniors, and one area that we're really lacking in the Fargo-Moorhead area is in affordable housing for seniors of lower income. That is something that I would like to focus on and make a change in. Yeah.
Thank you. Desiree?
I think one of the biggest problems for people to have affordable housing right now is our economy. Everything's increased in costs, and that includes housing and everything that goes along with housing. I think that our current administration is a big part of that problem, and I think if that problem becomes resolved and people can get back to living a life where they can afford to buy a home, like a first-time buyer home, and afford to pay for the gas for their cars and the food that they need in their refrigerators. I think all those things together, and a lot of that is tax relief as well. They need to give people back their money instead of spending it on foolish things that we don't really need. What are the wants? What are the needs?
Thank you. Todd?
So two things. The first thing, we simply need more inventory. We need more housing, and we need different tiered types of houses. We can't have, $1.5 million houses that are being built like crazy and not have anything for people lower in income. So that's where I'd start. Is just, and this is where I'm going to sound probably a little bit like people on the other side of the aisle. If there's regulations, if there are ways to cut costs to building, to incentivize builders, Bank of North Dakota, we need to do that, and we need to do that quickly, because the housing shortage is really limiting the American dream, people's ability to fulfill their dreams. So we need to focus on that. The other thought that I would add is, I've worked as a consultant for smaller communities, and it's how do you get started? So we really need to look at how do we incentivize builders just to get started and get moving on building homes.
Thank you. Will?
I agree with everything that Todd just said there, so I'm going to use my time to really paint a picture of how unaffordable things have gotten in South Fargo. Over the 4th of July, my family rented an Airbnb in downtown Minneapolis to enjoy some Twins games. That Airbnb, a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Minneapolis, was the same price that my sister now pays for an apartment in South Fargo. A 1-bedroom apartment in South Fargo is the same price as a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Minneapolis. And that's because Minneapolis has done something radical. They built housing. They have a stock of housing, and a diverse set of houses. We don't want just to build one type of house. We need a diverse options, the senior affordable care, affordable senior housing, single family homes, affordable apartments. We need more of all of these things. And I think that we as a state can incentivize these sorts of buildings.
Thank you. Michelle?
Regulations. If you were to purchase a $300,000 home today, it would cost you $390,000 because 30% of that would go to pay for regulations. And that's at the city level, the state level, and the federal level. So we can't control the federal level, but we can incentivize or get the word out for the city. But the legislatures could deal with some of these regulations that builders have to cross off the list, and it just increases the cost of that home to build. Right now, just as Desiree said, we are in inflation. I mean, the supplies, the cost to build a home right now has raised with inflation, and that's
Thank you. All right, our next question will be answered first by Jess. And that question is, culture wars such as pronoun bills and book bans were a priority last session. Do you feel these bills were a good use of taxpayers' money?
Not at all. Absolutely not. That's a big reason of why I'm running. I wasn't looking to run. That's a big reason why I threw my name into the hat. My social work background has taught me to meet people where they're at. I'm very strong at relationship building. I believe that the priorities of our state, such as alleviating property tax and all the other issues that we've been talking about with childcare and workforce shortages and and education, they've all been put to the wayside to make time and energy for things that we'll never agree on. And we need to stop pushing each other's buttons and focus on what we do all agree on, which is helping our families and our loved ones thrive and be safe, healthy, and stable in our communities. That's where our focus should be 100% of the time.
Thank you. Desiree?
Could I ask you to repeat the question again?
Yes. Culture wars, such as pronoun bills and book bans, were priority last session. Do you feel these bills were a good use of taxpayers' money? And could I just stop for a minute? Were you getting ready to say something to Jess about?
Oh, just a little bit of space from it's getting a little bit muffled. So.
Yeah, everybody
Be
just
back.
hold back.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Perfect.
Excuse me, Desiree, go right ahead.
I would have to say I do not believe that's a good use of taxpayer dollars. I think we need to spend more time focusing on the needs of our communities, the needs of our state, infrastructure, schools, and the issues that impact us every single day. Taxes and just wasted spending. I think there needs to be more focus on where we're spending the money and less time spent on issues that we are, like Jess said, we're not going to resolve.
Thank you. Todd?
So this is an issue where I 100% believe it's a waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of resources. And at the end of the day, everybody just gets exhausted and want to turn off politics. So it's a very damaging exercise. And this is where I think where I want to build leadership based on vision, based on how to have a conversation that is productive, that brings all stakeholders into the room, into the conversation where they feel like their input matters. And that's the type of leadership I want to foster and bring to Bismarck. So that would be my focus. Get away from things we can't solve, large national issues, and focus on what's important in North Dakota.
Thank you. Will?
I agree with my Democratic colleagues, and you could probably have guessed that because I've talked about this issue in my opening statement already. The focus on culture war issues is not only a waste of time, but it's also pushing people out of the state. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources, especially not just during the session, but after the session when these unconstitutional bills get challenged in court and struck down. We just saw, for example, the most extreme abortion ban in the country struck down because it unconstitutionally infringes on a woman's right to life. This is all just an exercise in wasting money so that ideologues can feel good about trying to fight some nebulous culture war. I think that we need to refocus on increasing people's standard of living and not focus on alienating people and pushing them out of our states. I'm really excited to see Jim's response to this question because he sponsored many of these culture war bills, including the ban on critical race theory. So I'm waiting with bated breath to hear your response.
Thank you. Michelle?
This pronouns and book bans this is like culture war. I mean, I'm just wondering why is this so important that we are even pushing this? I mean, it's coming from the secular branch of a small group of people that want to push out, our GOP platform. Legislators lead through personal moral integrity. That's what we do. And so if you want to push for banning a book, or if they're really referring to pornography in school, I'm not real sure, but that needs to be addressed. So yes, there are some things that need to be addressed if you're talking about the secular view.
Thank you. Jim?
My colleagues on the dais will learn when they're there, if they are there, that the beautiful thing about being a legislator is you get to introduce bills that you feel strongly about. Each legislative session, we have about 1,000 bills we deal with. The pronoun and the other area of area that was just discussed, I think we had 6 or 8 bills in the last session. So out of 1,000, there was 6 or 8. But each legislator has the freedom to introduce whatever bill he or she desires. That's your freedom if you get elected there. The beautiful thing about the legislative process is we get to argue and we get to stand for what we believe is right. Critical race theory, the bill that Will referred to, I did introduce that. It was in the special session. It passed. One of 3 or 4 bills that passed. The governor signed it, and it's currently banned in the state of North Dakota. And I don't have time to get into what critical race theory is, but I can tell you it's pretty bad.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, Desiree, you will be the first person to answer this question. Mental health care access has been a growing concern across the state. What specific actions will you take to improve access to mental health services, especially for children and veterans?
Yeah, we definitely do have a mental health crisis. And we do definitely need to address that. I don't know that pumping more dollars, government dollars into programs are going to help that. I think some of that needs to be addressed, like why are we having these issues? Where is this coming from? And allowing some of these not just nonprofit, but conservative Christian organizations to also play a part in that. I think there's a lot of money that goes out to a lot of government programs for helping in those ways, but they don't really help people that are not involved in the government to help with some of these issues. And I think some of those dollars could be addressed a different way through other programs that are more of a nonprofit or a conservative Christian type organization.
Thank you. Todd?
So I have a vision, and that vision is on nearly every major street corner. There's some place you can go to, check in, and just get help. And I think that is coverage is a big issue of people who suffer from mental illnesses. So that's where I would, again, that's a big kind of grandiose plan. I don't know if we can achieve that, but the first thing I would do as far as policy-wise is really review, again, that vision, review what we've done, and then understand what works and what doesn't work, and replicate what is working. So it's really starting at the foundational level, understanding, you can use data, you can use tools to really figure out. And I think the problem is just so large and complex. It's not going to be a overnight solution, and we got to come in with those expectations. So really.
Okay, thank you. Will?
I'm not going to have time to talk about all the things that can be talked about when it comes to mental health care, but to answer the question specifically, children, one of the best ways that we can help children in their mental health struggles is getting more counselors into school. Minnesota had a great bill that expanded a requirement of having a certain number of counselors per student. Counselors in school are that first line of defense for children suffering from mental health issues. When it comes to veterans, I'm not as super informed on the VA system. I was under the impression that it's mostly a federal system, but certainly the state should do whatever it can to help our veterans suffering from mental health issues. When it comes to resources for things like addiction, I think it's good to look up at Grand Forks, the Alcohol Treatment Center up in Grand Forks that receives funding from the state. We've expanded its funding, recently, but it's still not enough. We know how to get people sober. We know how to get people the help, but we need more funding because there's way more of a demand than there is supply. And then I'm running out of time, but also it's a workforce issue.
Thank you. Michelle?
Yeah. Mental health. When you're talking about children and families, and, I trust the parents to know what their children need. And if those parents need access to mental health facilities, I didn't know that there was a lack of it for children. I haven't heard of any parents knowing that they can't get health care for their children, but it is the family issue to get help for their child. As well as homelessness, it's always, are they alcoholic and drug addicts, or do they suffer from mental illness? It's always one or the other. And that needs to be addressed to help the homeless folks.
Thank you. Jim?
I'll focus on the veteran side of the question. I was honored to serve as the chair of the Government and Veterans Affairs Committee in the North Dakota House for 5 legislative sessions. And so we heard in the Government and Veterans Affairs Committee all the issues for the veterans, including mental health, including their pay, including other benefits. We have the Veterans Hospital here in Fargo. It's one of the best. It is a federal hospital. We have very little control over it in the state, but it is a good facility. But we could always use more dollars for our veterans. Our veterans are underserved in the whole country. But in North Dakota, we do a pretty good job. I was a veteran. I am a veteran. I guess not was. I'm still here. I served 6 years in the Army Reserve. And just for an aside, my father, Otto Casper, was the Veteran Service Organization for Mercer County for 27 years when I was growing up. So I've been very involved with veterans over my life.
Thank you. Jess?
I'm going to pick up that ball where Will left off with the workforce issues. When I went back to school, to NDSU and then MSUM for social work, at that time in the early 2000s, the average Cass County social worker was carrying 4 times the recommended caseload. The average supervisor of a social worker was carrying twice the recommended caseload, and a supervisor shouldn't be carrying a caseload. They should be supervising and supporting their staff. Here we are now, 20 years later, and we're still pretty much in the same boat. And we're in Cass County, where we have the most resources in the state. So just think of other parts of our state where resources are even less. We need people into these professions. We need to incentivize these professions. We need to work with our institutions of higher ed to be expanding programs in these areas so that we can expand access to treatment. And we also need to get serious about treating mental health care as health care.
Thank you. This will be our last question before we move into final statements, and it goes to Todd first. Do you believe in local control of our city laws and finances?
Absolutely. And so I would like to take a moment about Measure 4, because I think that's where the biggest threat to local control of finances. So I'm a believer in that good governance is as close to the people as possible. It understands their needs. It understands the vision for growth. It understands the day-to-day nuance. And so absolutely having those, county commissioners, city commissioners, people on the ground understanding what their community needs are, it needs to stay there. And so something like Measure 4, I think is very dangerous because it's kind of stripping that voice of the person on the ground that is close to the people and put it in the hands of, we don't really know what, a few people in Bismarck maybe. So to answer your question, absolutely local control needs to be there for people who manage the finances and budgets of cities and municipalities.
Thank you. Will?
I just want to say real quickly to Michelle, it's not either or when it comes to mental health or substance abuse. Substance abuse disorder is a mental health issue, and oftentimes they're inexplicably linked together. So it's not an either or situation there. But when it comes to local control, I'm a strong supporter of local control when it comes to economics and when it comes to all sorts of other things. The legislature in the past has passed laws that strip local control on things that are important and on things as mundane as whether or not cities can ban plastic bags. I actually don't support such a measure. It actually increases emissions, but I think it's ridiculous that we're banning a local municipality's ability to control such things. We've also seen state government coming after our local election laws. Jim Casper sponsored a bill that would overturn the will of 64% of Fargonians that voted for an approval voting system. So I believe in local control. I agree on Measure 4 with what Todd said as well.
Thank you. Michelle?
We have federal laws, state laws, city laws, community. laws. I mean, every community needs to be self-governed themselves, but we have these overriding laws, and they're there for safety. I mean, the federal government's sole thing is to provide safety for every citizen. The dollars, the funding, that's going to be shared as well, from the state to the local, to the federal funds that we get, the state funds. It's all commingled. It's from laws to taxes. I can't, it's tough to separate it.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
We do have local control. It's in the North Dakota Constitution. Our school boards, our city boards, our county boards, our park boards, they're all constitutional. And the Constitution sets out the rules and the regulations for those local entities. The state of North Dakota does not interfere with the local control. The bill that Will talked about on approval voting, I did introduce a bill to get rid of it. We're one of 2 cities in the United States that has that insidious method of electing people, and I think it's wrong. I'll probably introduce a bill like that again. But local control is here. The trouble in local control is the people want control, but it's the entities that are elected, the board members, who have the control. They're the ones who are talking about we're going to lose local control, as an example, in measure number 4. There's no local control whatsoever taken away in measure number 4. It simply pays the property tax that's levied in 2004 forever. No local control changes.
Thank you. Jess?
Yes, I am absolutely for local control. I'm opposed to Measure 4, and I'm opposed to our state leaders spending their time trying to dictate communities. Fargo knows what's best for Fargo. Rolla knows what's best for Rolla. Mott knows what's best for Mott. Bismarck knows what's best for Bismarck. Control should be within the community.
Thank you. Desiree?
I agree with local control, absolutely. But they do have local control, and like Jim said, they will not lose local control even with this, if this measure passes, which is up to the people to decide whether or not they want it to pass. So I think you're giving the power to the people to decide, and we live in a republic. The people have the right to say what they want, and they should be able to go to their local governments and say, hey, I don't agree with this, and their local government should listen to them. And I don't know that that's always the case. So I think they have a lot of control at the local level, and again, they will not lose that control if this measure passes, and I am definitely for this measure.
Thank you. Okay, this concludes the question and answer portion of this forum, and we will move on to closing statements. And the first closing statement will come from Will.
Well, thank you again to the League of Women Voters and to AARP for this forum. Thank you to the City of Fargo for hosting it in this venue. And thank you to the people that tuned in and listened. It's deeply important that our communities are engaged civically. That's how we continue to live in a strong democratic country. Once again, my name is Will Thompson. I'm running for the House in District 46, and I would appreciate your vote. A vote for me is a vote for a new perspective, a new generation, and new ideas. I think it's time for a change to the status quo. I meet people that are very upset with how things have gone in North Dakota over the last several years, and they're ready for a change. And I hope that I presented myself as a candidate that can present that change today. So thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your engagement, and continue to do that because far too many people don't engage in their local government.
Thank you. Michelle?
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and all you attending and watching on streaming. I want to thank everybody also. This is very important to vote. It's the least of our civic duties that we can do is just vote. And it's disappointing in Fargo, even the primary, that people aren't engaged enough to to respect that civic duty of theirs and to vote. So I do want to stress, everybody who's streaming, just do your civic duty and get out and vote. We have a country to save, and that's your most important thing you can do.
Thank you. Jim.
Thank you. Thank you to the league, and thank you to the people for being here tonight. And most importantly, I want to thank my constituents in District 46. I've been honored and blessed by them to be elected and reelected 6 separate times over the last number of years. I'm running for my last term because of the term limits that our honored colleague in the audience mentioned earlier. And I'm asking for the District 46 residents to give me another chance to go back to the legislature. I have a record I'm very proud of, and I've got with me a data sheet. The people who know me, I always have data. I've sponsored over the time I've been there, sponsored or co-sponsored 483 bills, 112 with Democrat co-sponsors. 242 of those bills have passed into law. That's a little bit over 50%. I'm part of the conservative leadership in the House, and I want to go back and be a continued leader for the conservative side of things in the North Dakota House because we don't have enough conservatives there. I can tell you that.
Thank you. Jess?
Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Jess Arneson. Thank you for considering me for our District 46 Senate seat. If I'm elected, every vote, every decision that I make, every voice that I bring to the table will be for keeping our communities and our families healthy, stable, and safe. That's what I stand for, and that's the voice that I want to bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Desiree?
I want to say thank you also to the League of Women Voters for inviting us here tonight for this forum, and thank you for everybody who came to listen, and as well as those that are on TV watching this. I am not a politician. I'm not a polished speaker. I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm a wife, but I feel like I can bring a constitutionalist, common sense, conservative voice to the legislature, and that's my desire to do that. And I sincerely would ask for your vote. And I will be a listening ear to the people of District 46. My phone number is out there, my email, call me anytime, email me, whatever. I am open to listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd?
Well, certainly wanted to thank the league for hosting us, and also want to give a shout out to everybody up here. Jim, thank you for your service. It's not easy to put your name on a ballot. It takes a lot of courage. So thank you guys for sharing this moment. So, basically to the voters of District 46, I'm asking for your vote. And the reason why I'm asking for your vote is I believe I have the experience, I have the vision that will turn these, seems like bad Thanksgiving conversations that are just shutting down our government from anything really getting done, and just re-engineering how we operate. And that means focusing on issues, big challenges that we can actually solve. I believe I have the personality, I have the experience to bring people together. And that's really where I can make an impact at Bismarck. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the candidates for participating and for everyone who took the time to be here to listen to the candidates. If anyone would like to continue learning more about candidates, please visit vote411.org to help you learn more about the candidates' positions on important issues. This concludes our forum for the evening. Thank you and have a great evening.